Every woman should have access to healthy products, vaginal products. And so many competitors are so high priced that it's just not accessible for many women.
Hey guys, Allison here. Today on Vaginally Speaking, we're diving deep into the science and soul of vaginal health with someone who's truly reshaping the conversation. Wendy Strgar is the founder of Good Clean Love in vaginal biome science, and she was recently named to the 2025 Forbes 50 over 50 innovation list. Let's just say she's a total powerhouse in women's health, pioneering something called Biomatch technology, basically products that work with your body instead of against it. We're talking about what the vaginal microbiome actually is, how cancer treatments can affect it, and what it really looks like to heal, reconnect, and feel good in your body again. Welcome, Wendy. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and that's a lovely introduction. Yeah, that was kind of a fun list to be on with Halle Berry, right? She's on the entertainment side, but, yeah. And actually, when I think about getting on that list, it feels like it's more about sort of recognizing this work than it is even me, right? Like, I do feel grateful to be holding this bucket for a long time, but, we know vaginal health has been so long ignored in this country that the standard of care has not changed in my entire life, right? And if you're in the really common yet unfortunate community states where you constantly are combating some kind of vaginal infection or discomfort or, can lead to disease states really easily, we just give women nothing,
Yes, you are absolutely correct.
So I feel like there's a huge white space, and I feel really grateful to have met a biophysicist who taught me about Biomatch, and to pretty much, once I learned about that became the mission of Good Clean Love, to do that kind of work.
Absolutely. And so you kind of already touched on it, but like, what truly inspired you to start Good Clean Love in the first place?
Well, I didn't know anything about Biomatch when I started, but I was a mother like you. I had 4 children, my last one when I was 37. And so, I don't know how many children you have, but we know that with each successive birth, the complication level rises. And, I had to have a prolapse surgery after my last one. And I was lucky to get that, right? Because otherwise I'd have some horrible story with mesh to tell you about. So, and truthfully, that was the most painful experience I've ever had. Way worse than giving birth to children, if you can imagine. That's how incredibly painful that surgery was. But yeah, a lot of women don't even get those kinds of surgeries recommended to them when so many more need them than actually get that care. So I'm forever grateful to that doctor. But I have a long stories, many stories, even as early as my teen years, of just having these recurrent yeast infections and thinking, what am I doing wrong? And and it was so embarrassing. You had to go to your pediatrician and that's still happening today, right? I mean, you can get Monistat over the counter, but half the time it's not yeast, it's bacterial vaginosis, right? Or we don't even know. Truthfully, half the time we don't even know. 2 out of 3 infections are misdiagnosed every day in this country, and women are put on antibiotics for sometimes the length of an entire pregnancy, if you can believe I'm saying that. So, so much needs to happen around vaginal health care that I feel like, I'm lucky to contribute, but, hopefully for decades after I'm gone, we will continue this push to really equalize care, which, it's funny because we talk about equal care, but we never even talk about vaginal care and equal care. It's the most primary part of what it is to be female as opposed to male, right? Of course we're female in every cell of our body. And of course the way that menopause affects our heart health and, our hormonal health and our brain health and all these things. I mean, I'm not saying it's more important or less important, but when you realize that women who go through cancer treatment, and sometimes they elect to do a new kind of treatment for breast cancer or whatever kind of cancer they might have. The number one reason that they discontinue those treatments is because of their vaginal symptoms. Mm. And that's true about a lot of these drugs that many women are given after, like, whatever other kind of cancer treatment they get, where they completely eliminate all estrogen. And what that does to vaginal health, of course, is like really, really serious. And many women, they don't even discuss that with them. They're like, well, we saved your life. Like, what are you complaining about just because you're in pain every day after? Mm-hmm. It's as if, we're asking too much to feel good in our bodies again. So, I, have designed products specifically for those women, and we're doing more and more work like that. But, whatever, I'm so tired of this number of stories that we hear where doctors don't believe what their female patients tell them. This can go on for 10 years before a woman is then finally diagnosed as infertile because of endometriosis, and
right.
been hemorrhaging for decades or more, and nobody's listening. Oh, that's normal. It's not normal. So there's just a lot of work to do in women's health when it comes to the most primary place that our health begins.
I feel like we could get on some really
you see, I'm kind of a warrior.
We could get really, yes, which is great. I will tell you, Wendy, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I did pediatric OT before I had my children. And I had our daughter, and I had a lot of challenges afterwards, including chronic itching and burning. And nobody was talking to me about vaginal health. Nobody was talking about me working on my scar tissue after tearing. Nobody was saying, hey, what? How about you use some more lube? Because when you're breastfeeding, your vaginal area tends to dry up, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not sexually attracted to your partner. We should all use lube. That's my biggest stance when I talk to patients is like, nobody should be scared of lube, but we should use the right type of lube. And spit is not lube.
Actually scary, right? So I do want to say that I've been working as a lubricant manufacturer and formulator for many years. And I was in that same boat, right? Like, because every successive birth, the symptoms are more intense, right? They don't tell you that either, that it gets worse with each birth. I don't know why that's true, but like, it's not even just when you're having sex that you're dry after your fourth birth. You're just, having really intense dryness all the time. And of course, historically, what did doctors give you but KY or Astroglide or other products that were made with propylene glycol, which is another word for brake fluid and antifreeze, and has no business being near the most sensitive tissue in your body because it strips the epithelium, the top layer of your cells. And so that's your protective immune layer. So even if you're really a healthy woman and you use that kind of product, within 4 hours, we see this huge percentage of women having overgrowth of bad bacteria, or what we commonly refer to as bacterial vaginosis. So the products on market, right, like some lubricants, it's actually better for women not to use those. It's better for them to use nothing than to use those, So, and, coconut oil, there's other things that people sort of have turned to historically. I was one of those people, right? Like that, I tried the olive oil from the kitchen when I was trying to maintain a sex life with my husband, and I just couldn't make that kitchen bedroom swap.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't know if you think about this, Wendy, but we have a lot of patients that will come in who talk about using coconut oil, and they ask us, what are your thoughts on coconut oil? And I will have the conversation with them saying, I understand wanting to have this healthy choice and utilize something that's more natural. And I said, but we do have to remember that coconut oil is oil. and our natural lubrication is like water. And so if we are more prone to yeast infections or UTI, coconut oil is not a great choice for us because it'll just sit up there and that bacteria will grow.
No, exactly, because it coats the lining, right?
Right.
The same thing with silicones, actually. We don't really talk about that about silicones either, but it takes a long time for silicone to slough off, right? Dimethicone lubes. But yeah, so the ideal thing is what we call biomatched water-based lubrication. But we actually just made a coconut one for all those coconut lovers out there.
We haven't tried that one yet in our samples, so we're going to have to try that one.
So we call it naked coconut, but it's basically a hybrid with coconut oil, organic coconut oil, and our water phase. And it's really lovely. So you get the coconut smell. It's got this really, really incredible, slippery, long-lasting experience. And so you can have your coconut oil and eat it too, right? I mean,
there you go.
Right? Like in that case. And it's actually like, it's one of our it's brand new. I'd been working on that for many years and we just launched it and it's actually now one of our most popular lubricants. So we can barely keep it in stock. So we'll have to get you some sample. I don't even know if those are sampled yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, we love it. I will tell you that Good Clean Love, the samples that you provide providers to be able to give out to patients is incredible because we talk about Good Clean Love with all of our patients. And then we're able to say, hey, here's some samples to try before you go buy the product. And then, hey, right down the street at Target or Walmart or Walgreens, you can buy this product, which is incredible for our patients to feel like, hey, I don't have to wait for it to come in the mail or, we can literally go grab it, which is great.
Yeah, no, we're really happy to be that kind of omni brand. And whatever also when you compare price wise, the thing that I've always worked really hard at Good Clean Love is that every woman should have access to healthy products, vaginal products. And so many competitors are so high priced that it's just not accessible for many women. We just got into Walmart with some of our top SKUs, and honestly, they're like line priced. So whatever, I didn't have anything to do with this, but they're really underpriced, is what I'm telling you at Walmart. But I also feel good about that because then that many more people can use them, and that's really how it should be. So yeah, I'm happy to hear that. And I have a really exciting thing I've been working on. Feels like I've been working on this forever, like close to 5 years. It takes almost as long as writing a book. But I'm going to be launching this winter a new platform called Clinical Care by Good Clean Love.
Ooh, okay. Tell us more.
So the clinical care is focused really on women who postpartum, post-cancer, recurrent UTI, recurrent BV, recurrent yeast infections, right? Like we can't really dedicate the attention and education and product support on our omni-channel brand to those conditions. So we're creating a clinical space where one of the big things that I've been working on is developing a PCR-based test so that practitioners can really see with a broad, comprehensive view what is happening in the microbiome. Oh. And so that's how we'll stop misdiagnosing women, right? If we saw, because we always believe it's these same bacteria, like we say E. coli is for every UTI. Well, it turns out only 20% of UTIs is E. coli, and same thing with BV. We think it's always Gardnerella or Prevotella with Gardnerella. But turns out there's a ton of women who have ureaplasma, strep, and enterococcus, sometimes even E. coli, right? So those bacteria are not going to respond to metronidazole. And you can give it over and over again for as long as you want. They're still not going to respond, So really knowing what bacteria is in you is like, that's how we normally do medicine in every other part of a woman's body, but not here. The traditional tests that doctors have used for decades, like just look at 6 targets, like those targets I mentioned, but they're not looking for these bugs that they think shouldn't be living there. Well, they are living there. And so I'm hoping that this test is going to become a really useful tool for doctors and patients who can't actually figure out what's wrong with them. And that's not a small percentage of women, honestly. So like what you were saying, after you gave birth, right? This is the recurrent yeast or itching or whatever it was, right? There's even in yeast, we always thought we knew what this yeast was. Well, now there's, with climate change, all these different kinds of molds and fungi, and they don't all respond to the same antifungals. So to start, we're going to have the test, and then what I'm super excited about is that many of the drugs that women get are hyperosmolar in the same way that KY and Astroglide is hyperosmolar. So we haven't really talked that much about Biomatch technology, but what's really cool is that our drugs that we're going to give on this website are going to be formulated in a Biomatch base. So just like our lubricants or our vaginal gels are, so that the drug can actually do its work because it's not doing all this damage to your vaginal health.
Yeah, let's go more into that Biomatch that you were kind of surfacing there of, how did you
work?
Yes,
Yeah.
how does it work? Tell them.
Yeah. So for years and years, probably when you were a little girl, there was a lot of talk about the gut biome. And it took at least 20 years, maybe longer, of all that kind of education about the gut biome for doctors to believe that the bacteria in your gut is actually predictive not only of whether you're going to have more stomach aches, but all kinds of health issues, right? Like your immune function lives in your gut. Well, so your microbiome, your gut microbiome, is part of a very big microbiome, right? It's all one microbiome that starts in your sinuses, in your mouth, in your, you could even say in your heart in some ways, it's that mucous membrane that runs through the body, right? And exit out the vaginal opening and the rectal opening. All of that is microbiome tissue. And so the microbiome in the vagina has a lot of those same things are true, which is to say that if you have more bad bacteria than good bacteria, then you're going to have a lot of odor and a bunch of other symptoms, itching, discharge, burning, right? Like these are the most common. The problem with those symptoms is that all of these different conditions have different varieties of the same symptoms. So for many women, it's hard for them to even is this different than this other itching I had? Or is this burning different than this burning, right? It's like, we don't know, know?
Right.
So that's why this test, is going to give you real insight into actual counts of what good bacteria you have, what bad bacteria you have, including the ones that they're not generally testing for. And also the same thing with fungus, and so, that's different than the whole genome sequencing testing that's commonly offered online, because those tests, first of all, you're looking at your whole genome when really what you're trying to do is just look at your vaginal health. And you're also really only getting what they call relative abundance. So there's more of this compared to this, right? It's not actual counts that they can show you. And even though I think that's very informative, sometimes even more informative than what we're doing, because it's looking at all these things that we don't even know what we're asking for. But you have to go to a pretty deep level to understand what's meaningful. And most of those tests are just 1 million reads, which is not very deep on that microbiome testing. But at any rate, what's more important is that doctors won't prescribe off of relative abundance. So you could take that test to your doctor, and the doctor, he can't make sense or refuses to make sense out of it, right? In any rate, let's say it's outside of the standard of care, that kind of information. So that's why we built this test to be inside the standard of care with just more information in it. And then we're going to be offering these medications, actually a much wider variety of medications than most women can get at a doctor to deal with pain issues, some bacterial but again, in our Biomatch base. So I'm sort of not answering your question. Biomatch works because of three things. One is that it's isoosmotic. So osmolality, if you remember from high school, is how the cells try to balance what's inside and outside. Mm-hmm. So when something's hyperosmolar, which is what's true about most medicines and products, washes or gels or lubricants, it means that what's outside is pulling all the moisture from the cells out of the cells, and the cells are sloughing off. Mm-hmm. Usually you can see this happen in a histology report within 4 hours. So you've lost that protective barrier of immune protection, right? And so that's the foundational piece about Biomatch, is that because we're isoosmotic, that means we don't add or subtract any water. So the system remains intact. And then you can actually do things like lower pH. So if you see pH balanced or pH reducing on a product that is in fact hyperosmolar, that's like an oxymoron. It doesn't mean anything. You can't be hyperosmolar and also pH balancing. But we can actually reduce the pH. And how we do that is most kind of miraculous and fundamental, is that we use a kind of lactic acid that actually matches and supports a diverse set of lactobacilli. So many women, for reasons we don't understand, we only know that it's true, and it's true around women of color, all color. So whether it's Hispanic, African American, Indian, Native American, Asian, all these women tend to have more lactobacilli, native lactobacilli called lactobacilli inners or iners. And that lactobacilli does not produce the D-lactate the way crispatus, which is kind of the gold standard, that you find it in the healthiest vaginas. There's of course other varieties and strains of lactobacilli also that are real supporters. But so when we try to support women, we provide a type of lactic acid that has both D and L lactate for all those women who don't make D themselves.
Okay.
And that can help keep the healthiest lactobacilli vibrant and flourish, right? Because that's food for the lactobacilli, right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the lactobacilli create a cycle and they produce their own food. But if there's if the microbiome, the vaginal microbiome, the pH is too high and there's no food there, you could put good lactobacilli in there, but it won't survive. So that's why we do this Biomatch thing where we give people a wash that does that work on the outside, right? Like with the DNL lactate on the outside, and also a vaginal gel on the inside. And then we have our reset, and these things are available, I think, at Walmart, our reset with the native lactobacilli, like I was telling you about crispatus and the other really healthy strains. And so long as you keep using the system, then you can reestablish a healthy microbiome, even if it's like not your own, but just you can basically colonize good lactobacilli so long as you keep supporting the system.
Okay. I have two products that I feel like are on different spectrums, Wendy, that I'm curious about that we have a lot of patients ask about. And I'll say them too, and then whichever makes sense for you to talk about first. The first one is your fertility lubrication. That's a huge one that people, and as from the information I know about you were talking just now about the food supply and what I've read from the information about the fertility, I feel like that goes hand in hand. And then the other product that I feel like you were just also talking about was we talk about the moisturizer for the vulval area and how incredibly important it is. And we really emphasize this for all patients, but really for our menopausal, perimenopausal and menopausal women, right? And we say you should moisturize your vulva just as much as you moisturize your face. So I know those two products, I would love to hear you talk even more about those.
Yeah, for sure. So the moisturizer is actually intended to moisturize not only the external vulvar area, but also the inside. Because, after you have a baby and maybe you're nursing, or if you're taking antihistamines or antidepressants, those things also dry out tissue. Or if you're perimenopausal or postmenopausal, then we know that your estrogen has gone into serious decline, and so then you really need more moisture inside as well as outside. So we have two products. One is called Restore. That's the classic one that we first developed with the biophysicist. And that is very similar to our almost naked lubricant because it's the majority of the product, 90% aloe. Aloe also has all kinds of remarkable benefits in terms of feeding and supporting healthy lactobacillus, which we're only beginning to discover, right? Like aloe, we know it's kind of a miracle thing when you get sunburned but it's also really, really a healthy ingredient internally, vaginally. I mean, some people even drink aloe juice, right? So I mean, I think we've only touched the surface of what aloe actually can do for us, but those two products were our first products, and they actually still kind of bestsellers for us, right? Some women react to aloe in the same way that they might react to the whole allium family, onion, garlic, where they would know if they're allergic to those things is in their mouth, right? Like they wouldn't feel it on their skin, but they would feel like if they eat anything that comes from that allium family, right? And aloe, of course, is part of that. And so because we bring our lubricants to the correct pH, all of them, which is for lubricants, we're between 4 and 4.4. 4.4 is really as high as you ever want to go. And for our vaginal moisturizers or vulvar moisturizers, it's like 3.7 to 4.1. Because that's, again, where that healthy lactobacilli can live, right?
Right.
So we're just trying to mimic what we know is true when women are healthy and they have a vibrant, healthy flora system. But here's one thing to know about those moisturizers. If your pH is really high, like 5 or higher, or 6, and this is going to bring me to the fertility question that you're going to ask me next. Then then women will use our product, and they're actually going to feel the action of that pH coming down as heating or burning, or I mean, I feel like it's more like a tingling, like when because I'm still one of those women that never got the right lactobacilli, and I'm constantly I use these products every day. I mean, honestly, I made them for myself, truthfully.
Absolutely. Isn't that how we all get into stuff?
When I'm out traveling or using a lot of weird toilets or just exhausted for any number of reasons, and you can smell your smell changes, right? So then I'll use the Restore Wood like I do every night. And some nights it's and I feel thankful when I feel that heating because I know that I'm coming back to normal. But some women who've had really bad experiences with any number of products, they don't know how to interpret that signal, and this of course gets better and better. Every time you use it, that experience is recedes. But the idea is that we're deliberately bringing the pH down, right? So that the good healthy lactobacilli can live there, but more importantly, so the bad bacteria die.
Right.
By doing that, we're killing the bad bacteria. Right? That's like how the whole body design is a miracle. The same thing in the gut, right? Even lower pH in the gut. So if you have good, healthy lactobacilli in your gut, then all these bad germs can't be hanging out and feasting, right? So it's the same in the vagina.
I will have to say, makes so much sense now that you're saying that out loud, because I'm pretty brutally honest with my audience, and I love using your product. And I remember the first time I used it during intercourse, I was like, why is this burning? And I was like, I
why.
don't know if I want to use this, if it's going to burn. And how come this is such like a prestige product? And I have now, like majority of the time it doesn't, right? But there will be every once in a while that I'm like, we use the same lubrication. Why is this bothering me? So like, aha moment, Wendy, that makes so much sense to me.
Because don't forget that your microbiome's dynamic, right? It's not like you get it to the right place and it just stays there, right? Like you have sex and that sex itself will push it up, right?
Right.
The pH of sperm is 7. So, and then this is a great lead in to our fertility lube. But your pH is a constant 4-ish, around 4, so that bad bacteria can't thrive there. Until, if you're going to have a baby, then your cervical mucus is at a very high pH of 7 for 24 hours every month. If a woman is cycling, she has this 24-hour period, and it looks like egg whites, right? And you super want to have sex on that day, and this is God's way of making us have more babies. And your pH is really high that day, because that's the day that, the pH, the sperm, like it's like an invitation up. But all the other days, I mean, there's a window there, right? Like, how you can get pregnant. But all the other days, you really don't want your pH to be up at 7, because then you're just creating an environment for bad bacteria. And so here's the thing about fertility lubricant. There's only a few of them on the market because the testing requirements are very arduous. In some ways, I think over the top, but it's not easy to pass that test, which is to say that when you look at the ingredient base of most of them, that it doesn't make any sense when we talk about vaginal health, right? But when you think about the way you have to pass that test is that you have to prove that there's no like live or dead bacteria in the batch of product before you package it. Okay, it's very hard to make a product with no dead bacteria in it because there's bacteria everywhere, right? And so certain ingredients, of course, kill bacteria, right? More. I don't know what to say about all that chemistry, but let me just say that our product is the only product in market that has this amazing technology of buffering. So buffering means that it's designed to be at a low pH. And this is our regenesis, we call it now. It used to be called biogenesis. It's designed to be at a low pH until some sperm that's at a high pH shows up, or your cervical mucus is there. And then because it's like got low buffering, so then it can respond and the pH of the product will go up with the environment around it.
Oh, wow. So it adapts to it.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't force your pH up to 7 like Pre-Seed and all of those other ones do, right? It sets the pH at a very high level, which if you're on that day, right, like then that's fine. But if you're using it every day thinking that I don't know if this is the day, or you're giving yourself a large window, then you're creating an environment where you could get BV. And, that's not a great idea to conceive when you have BV.
No.
So our fertility lubricant is all the things we talked about before, Biomatch, because it's isoosmotic, and so it doesn't disrupt, whereas the other lubricants do disrupt. So that's one thing. And then it has this secret buffering capacity that allows the pH to be adaptive to move to that 7 when there's cervical mucus and or sperm present. So it's really protective of that pH level, which is so important. It's actually the biggest single lever of controlling your vaginal health. If you can keep your pH low over time, then bad bacteria can't grow there. And that's what these lucky women who are in the community state 1 that have the right bacteria, no matter what they do, and they're constantly producing this really healthy lactic acid to feed the right bacteria, and we know even in sub-Saharan Africa that these women who are born with this amazing community state 1, they don't get AIDS, right? So it's a real thing, but only 1 out of 3 women has it. and we don't know how they got it. Of course, it's probably hereditary, right? Because we get our mother's bacteria when we go through the canal. But it's a very new science. And it's not a science that we can permanently alter either. It's not like I say, listen, use this system I'm describing to you, and then you'll be better forever. You'll only be better as long as you do it.
Right.
If you're like not in that really lucky community state that most of us are not in. So yeah, I just don't think anybody makes better products than we do, because we I work with a chemist, like not a formulator, a true chemist. And I looked for this guy for 8 years, and it was our chief science officer, and they both worked together at Johnson & Johnson. So you know what kind of quality people that used to work at I mean, maybe they still do, but they don't work there anymore. They work with me. And so we're really able to build amazing things that nobody else is doing based on science. And I think it's probably the most important thing I've done with my life. I had 4 kids. That was really
those are important. But, it's so incredible, really cool. Wendy, that I think most women could say to have a female who's doing this, right? Because how irritating is it when we're like, it's just males creating a product for females, when we're like, the information, but do you know what it feels like, right?
It's like what I can tell you about my business, and I think what makes me kind of a unicorn, I probably would never say this at the 50 over 50 thing, but when you first pay attention in business to money, you can never make the right decision. Mm-hmm. If you don't think about money and you're really just trying to problem solve, then you can see what's true.
Right.
Most of what's wrong with the world, and I think that it's probably more severe than it was ever in my adult life, is wrong because of money. Mm-hmm. And so, and I don't know how it's going to go now, but I can tell you that I was first trying to solve my own problems, right? Because mm-hmm. I didn't want to get divorced. I had these little kids. I grew up in a divorce. I didn't want to do that to my children. I knew if I couldn't have sex with my husband anymore, that was kind of the glue that kept us going, and still to this day. So that's why people should read my book and listen to me, because, 41 years, 42 years, I've been having sex with the same man, and it's better than it's ever been. So you're not going to find many women at my age who say that.
No, and I absolutely love that. And two things on that, Wendy. One, I do believe in the power of being vulnerable and talking about our stories and why we did this. And a lot of us, like I said, I feel start a business or go into a career because we needed what we want to produce. Totally. And when you keep that in mind and you don't always have your...
I can't use it, I will not put it on the market.
Exactly. If I can't follow
if it's not safe and I wouldn't give it to my kid, why would I sell it to anybody?
Correct. No. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. I can't say that's accurate for everybody out there selling a product,
I've
right?
actually talked to people who were selling nightmarish stuff, and I'm like, would you give this to your wife? He's like, of course not. I'm like, why are you selling it?
Then why are you having other people use it? Yeah.
That's crazy.
And then talking about having sex with the same man for 42 years, I love that you just talked about that. So something that I am launching from One Strong Woman Therapy is a membership that talks all about sexual wellness and health and how, we talk about there are some women who've lost that spark. So feeling like they can get turned on again. And maybe that was because of motherhood.
Yeah, one of the number one places when women lose touch with their sexual health is after they give birth.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely
changes so much, and also I think there's another ironic thing that happens there is that so many women, and we run studies also, right? Like I told you, we actually do science, and we've been running a remarkable study at University of Nebraska with actually one of the most brilliant women I've ever met, who has been looking at arousal, which is kind of the big thing, right? It's like, where is that arousal? And microbiome health. So we do this thing where this for young women, because it's a university campus, right? And so the study is just looking at if their microbiome is not healthy, then how does that affect their arousal? And if we make it healthy, how does that affect their arousal, right? Like, so we set it up a bunch of different ways. And we know now unequivocally that if your microbiome is unhealthy, then you're not going to be sending that message to your brain about arousal.
Okay.
So all these things we're talking about, your microbiome is like, it's just like the same way there's a gut brain, vaginal brain, right?
Oh, for sure.
So that's really important to know. But here's the thing we didn't expect to find. We weren't looking for this. But it turns out 50% of the women in this study, full 50%, middle of the country, Nebraska, have been some kind of sexual abuse in their life. The earlier the sexual abuse, you know when it shows up? It shows up in arousal. So it's the same thing when you have a heart issue and they put you on that thing to test your heart. It's only when your heart is stressed that you can see the heart issue, right? Same thing, right? Like it's when you are moving to arousal that you see the dysfunction that was caused. And so I think there's an association. This is me kind of making a leap. But, you know, so many women have had some kind of erotic injury, whether it's in college or high school or maybe a family member as a child, whatever it was, right? They haven't been able to make sense of that erotic injury. And this is not a small percentage of women. I mean, I think it's one of the reasons we don't really study women's health is that we will then be really clear who is responsible for all of this stuff going on. So I don't want to point any fingers, but we don't talk about it. And, you know, the rates of incest in this country are unbelievable. Like, just unbelievable. And it like clearly gets like, you know, your body keeps the score, right? It gets embedded in the body in the vaginal microbiome, honestly. And so I think that like between that and then giving birth, like there's this way that we don't process these erotic injuries. And then after we give birth, there's a way that we can't quite find our way back to that sexy thing. I wrote this book called Sex That Works, a guide to discovering your erotic soul or something like that. And it's not really about how to have sex as much as it is about how to be curious, how to be courageous, about being transparent, about like those are the titles of the chapters, you know. I think it's a beautiful book, actually. You can get it on, I think you can get it on Kindle. I don't remember, but it's helped a lot of women start to think about how they think about sex, you know, and because, you know, you can talk about arousal and all this stuff as if it's like something you can just turn on with a pill, but it's really not like that, right? It's like, it's much more involved. And for sure your microbiome health speaks to that, but sort of coming to relationship with just your vagina.
Yes. Preach that, because that is the biggest thing I say, Wendy, is that our pelvic floor, because that's what I do, is not just physical. It's very emotional, very psychosocial and trauma filled. What you talked about, yes, unfortunately, so many women come in with some sort of sexual assault. And I even say you may have gone and gotten the help you needed for your mind, and you may have like come to terms or peace with it. But if you haven't told your body it's safe yet, it will not feel safe.
No, right. And so then you can see how after you give birth, it triggers that in this huge way, right?
Yes. And then we lose connection with our mind to our pelvic floor.
Right.
And how many women, they just can't even take that mind connection to their pelvic floor. So then when I've done internal work with those that are okay with it, it's amazing how many people, one, may cry, and not because it hurts. It's just a connection.
Tears, right?
Yes. And then two, that they're like, wow, like I didn't even know that part of my body existed. And it's like, yeah, I mean, what you're saying, I feel like we could go on and on, but it is just incredible in how important it is for us to continue this work.
Totally. And, you know, there is really this profound truth that you can't really be sexually well if you're not physically well. But you also cannot really be totally well if you're not sexually well.
Right.
You know, so it's like the number of women, and it just kind of, I feel like at post-pregnancy is where it starts, but then, that whole use it or lose it thing, right? Like you lose touch with that part of your body, and then you become perimenopausal, or, you're just like really tight down. I mean, there's so many reasons people need pelvic therapy, right? And just trying to find somebody who can do that well is not an easy thing, right? And
Right.
so, yeah, but just like the longer it goes on, the longer that inability to like feel that part of you or use that part of you, I feel like it's one of the greatest tragedies. And in fact, just like I was saying about money before, honestly, if we like collectively like could open and soften this sexual sort of fixation we have, so that people could access that part of themselves, right? Have an orgasm with somebody or by themselves. I mean, I feel like the whole world would change.
And when you have an orgasm,
Not having wars,
we
you
make
know?
better choices,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
and we're nicer people, and so the thing is, to the extent that that's closed from us, then we're fearful and defensive and defended and angry and violent, right? Like violence is the counter to sexual satisfaction. And it doesn't release anything, not the way, a healthy orgasm will. And so, I mean, I'm completely like made new, like every single time I do it. And like I said, I'm lucky. I don't hurt anybody. I'm married to the same guy. And, all these decades later, I'm so lucky. He's 67 and he's as good as he's ever been. So
I love that for you.
I'm
Yes,
just
Wendy.
like, please keep working out.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, believe me, I know how incredibly fortunate I am about that. But also I spent my whole career, building products for sexual health and, and teaching my children. And, my kid used to say, Mom, nobody talks about masturbation at the table but you. And I'm like, well, they should.
Yes, they should. They should. We need to be talking about it and quit the taboos. And that's one of my greatest goals, is just have the conversation that people feel that they can't have. But Wendy, I feel
it changes everything, right?
Absolutely.
Literally, it changes everything.
It does. It does. Well, Wendy, I feel like we could talk so much about sex because it's amazing. But I want to.
We should do another call.
I think we should
have it be about sex. Actually, I'll send you my books.
I would love that, because, and I think the audience would love it, because let's talk all about it and break those taboos, right?
Yeah.
And so I really want to thank you for joining me today and really like changing the way for vaginal health. It is so incredibly important. It means so much that there's a female out there doing it who actually uses the products and who actually is so invested in it and understands it. And so if you want to learn more about Wendy's work or try Good Clean Love products, we are going to have all the links in our show. So please do. We recommend this product to all of our patients. It's incredible. Almost every single one of us therapists use it ourselves, because we also thoroughly enjoy using it and believe in the product. But as always,
science-based, right? Like, it's not like marketing. Like, we do science at Vaginal Biome Science, and you can go see vaginalbiomescience.com, and you can look at the science and this huge study we're doing nationally. The first study of its kind, where we're collecting microbiome samples when women are diagnosed. So we're going to actually see visually what is happening when people are diagnosed. I think it's going to be crazy fascinating. So so for sure, use the products and look out for our clinical care coming soon. And then maybe for Valentine's Day, let's have a sexy talk about how they can get their groove back.
Apps. I love that. Yes. All of the above, and people, the links will be in there. Very excited about these products coming out in the winter. And as always, everybody, keep talking about it, keep learning about it, and keep owning your body, because we all deserve to feel good down there. Right, Wendy?
100%.
And own those orgasms.
The truth is that, like, you only need to ever have had one vaginal infection to realize that when you have that happening, that's all that's happening. It's kind of like if your kids have chicken pox and somebody calls you, what are you doing? It's like, my kids have chicken pox. That's all
Right.
I'm doing. You know?
That's literally all I'm doing.
And it's the same thing, right? Like when you have a vaginal thing, that's why, the productivity loss around vaginal health is $40 billion a year. It's crazy.
That is
We don't talk
crazy.
about that either. So anyway, yes, women, take care of yourself and get on a regimen with good, clean love products and let us know if it doesn't make you feel better. I think it will.
Yeah, I feel like Wendy would be open to feedback, but I feel like your feedback's going to be good. Keep an eye out for those products and keep listening because we will have another talk, Wendy and I, most likely around a sexy Valentine's Day. So thank you, everyone. Love and lube, especially good, clean love. All right.